I think a good launching point is the attention that you got for coming out as a conservative in Hollywood. It's kind of the story that everybody wants to tell, Fox News wants to tell, because everybody assumes that everybody's liberal there, and they assume that there's a politically correct environment that exists in Hollywood that prevents people from speaking their mind and being open. And I assume you're going to say, yes, there is this politically correct environment.
No question. No question there is. And it's more of an unspoken thing. And it doesn't necessarily, and in fact, I even talked about this on Fox and Friends. That's not to say that conservatives don't work. Because if you're a conservative, but you're bringing in the big bucks, I mean, the really big bucks, if you're not a little guy like me, but if you're somebody that, if your film or you in a starring role brings in big money, then they're gonna just swallow it, and they are going to work with you because money is the overriding. And this is what's so interesting is that, a lot of people on the left and a lot of leftists, because there's really barely any liberals anymore. A lot of leftists have their ideals, but at the end of the day, their ideals only last so long as their paycheck.
Yeah.
Right. And so if they're making a lot of money off of this person, they're going to go, oh, well, we don't like him. We don't like his views, but we're still going to use him because we're getting buku bucks.
Did you see Ricky Gervais at the Golden Globes?
Genius, beautiful.
Yeah, and I was never really a fan of the guy, but to be honest with you, I didn't know him well enough one way or the other to know whether I was a fan. There was just something about him that sort of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know what it was, so I kind of reluctantly go into watching it, thinking I'm not going to like this guy, and then he just frickin' killed him.
Oh my God!
I forget the line, but basically, you guys will gladly sell out to communist China, who oppresses their people and confines people and so on for $1.
Yep. Remember what I just said? Money. That's number one. Number one. They say that it's not, but that's not true.
Well, I'm gonna sprinkle in one other thing from my personal experience that just adds on to your point about all being money. In my first life, I was a civil rights attorney, but representing companies against claims of civil rights violations. So it's all these employees coming forward claiming I was fired because of my race, my sex, my religion, my sexual orientation, etc. And I handled dozens and dozens and dozens of these cases. And what I always say is, if you help a company make money, they keep you. If you don't help a company make money, they get rid of you. It's that simple. And I saw this dead on in handling tons of these cases, that they never got rid of anybody who was helping them make money. The people they got rid of were not helping them make money. And then that person comes up with some rationale or excuse or reason as to why they were terminated, when really it was, no, you weren't helping their bottom line.
Right. Well, and, something happened to me fairly recently. Before the Christmas break, I booked a film. And it was just a small role, but it was a big film. And which was nice because it's been quite a while. And so, I was all excited. Have we signed contracts yet? No, we hadn't signed contracts, but we had, kind of agreed on the rate, blah, blah, blah. I talked to the first AD, talked to wardrobe, gave them my measurements. We were all kind of going down that road. And then, a few weeks later, they fired me, and I didn't ever work. I got paid. In full, in fact.
So you had signed a contract with them?
I hadn't signed, but it was a verbal contract that they were going to use me, and I had gone down that road, and they called SAG. They registered me as this role with SAG, blah, 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 all of that stuff. And then they didn't use me.
And their explanation was?
None.
And why did they still pay you?
Because they had already said that they were going to book me. And because they had already called SAG. They had already called my manager, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And I presume your theory is that they Googled you.
That's my theory. Yes, that is my theory. But who knows? And the thing is that Honestly, I don't really even want to give them the satisfaction of me going, well, why did you fire me? Because they're just going to turn around and say, well, we thought you were good, but actually we decided that you're crap.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to think of a gazillion different reasons besides the one that seems like the big elephant in the room reason, and I think that maybe they hadn't Googled me. They hired me on, went down that road, then Googled me because I thought, okay, we're working with this chick.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wonder perhaps maybe it's possible that's why they paid you, just to alleviate any concern that you're going to come forward and bitch about anything.
Yeah.
And,
I'm not going to start. The thing I won't do, because I don't know, is I'm not going to say, well, it was this director who was a really good director. I would have really liked to work with him. This casting director, I have no idea. I will never. And that's the thing. That's the weird thing about being blackballed in Hollywood, is that you will never know. You will never know. All you know is you're not getting called in. You don't get called in for castings. You don't get called. And my manager is still with me. I don't know why, because he voted for Hillary, but he is still with me, and I'm thrilled. And he's a good guy. I like him. And I wouldn't say he's a leftist. I think he probably doesn't realize that he's without a party. But my voiceover agent dropped me, and I don't have an agent. And I'm not even going to try, honestly. I'm not even going to try and get one. Anything that I'm going to do from here on out will be something that I do of my own accord with my own friends, and crowdfunding, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a whole other conversation.
What about, is there any element of conservatives trying to help each other out and stick together in Hollywood? I mean, you've got Clint Eastwood.
Yes, there is.
Clint Eastwood's an example of one that's, like I said, if you're making them enough money, then it's okay. If you're in the middle where you're an actress that's somewhat fungible, then it's not so okay, right?
Yeah. If you're expendable, they don't care. If you're expendable, you are expendable. Or if you're expendable, you are expended, if that makes sense. But if you're not expendable and people know that they can make money from you, then they'll keep you on. They'll have you sign their contracts, and they'll give you money, and they'll try and keep themselves from gagging. Yeah, that's pretty much how it is.
And the sticking together part?
Say again.
Conservatives sticking together, is that exist where there's
conservatives? Actually, sorry about that. I kind of went off this. Conservatives, we have a number of kind of private groups that meet at private locations where we discuss various projects and things like that.
Do you have to wear a mask before walking in?
No, but we just don't advertise where this location is. Sometimes it's at the back rooms of restaurants that they rent out, or sometimes it's at a private home. There's a few different, there's Friends of Abe, there's Friends of Ron. There's a few different conservative meetup groups, a lot of them based around the industry. And then there's also some conservatives. In fact, I've been in talks with this one group of people and investors that have a new studio that they're starting up. I'm not going to say what. It's not in California, but it's a new studio they're starting up specifically to do conservative-based film. And actually, no, wait, I need to correct that. Specifically to do film that is subversively conservative. Because the truth is that if you're going to do a conservative-based film, no one from the center to the left is going to go and see that film. In fact, not only are they not going to see it, they're going to ridicule it, laugh at it, protest it, et cetera, et cetera. And there's, it's not going to get seen. So anytime, bless all those people that want to do these faith-based films, or they want to do films like Gosnell and Unplanned. And I'm very supportive of all of those people that do those films. However, those films are not going to change people's minds. The films that are going to change people's minds have to be subversive.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. If a film has any whiff of conservativeness to it, the critics will pile on it. I think Clint Eastwood's movies always get about a 25% lower Rotten Tomato rating simply because it came from Clint Eastwood. I think the Richard Jewell one was the one that he did recently that, only got about 65, 70%. It's a great movie. There's no reason why that movie should be 95%.
Yeah, and that's sad, actually, because Clint Eastwood does, even though he is an out conservative, he does not do what you would call obvious conservative films. They are a bit subversive.
Yeah.
If you look at The Mule.
But, American, I mean, I didn't see The Mule. I mean, American Sniper comes to mind as being pretty pro-American.
Right, more obvious.
Movie.
But look at The Mule. The Mule is still, and I would say The Mule is a perfect example of a subversive conservative film. Because here's an older guy who ends up being basically a drug runner. But he did it for the right reasons because he believed in family. That's the key word, believed in family. And then when he did get caught, he didn't lie about it. He admitted that he was wrong and he did his time, almost in a way that he said, okay, you caught me. I'm glad that you caught me. I'm happy to do my time because I was wrong, even though the reason I did it was I wanted to help my family. And that's powerful. And it's more things like that I think will change people's minds. But it does have to be tremendously subversive. It just has to have those underlying currents.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Breakthrough. Did you see that where the kid falls through the ice and is pronounced dead essentially and then brought back to life because the mom is praying over his body? Did you see that?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Yeah, it came out within the last year or so. It was a very good movie, but it's another one where there was just too much religion in it because at the end of the day, their belief was that God saved this kid because he was, flatlined for about 18 minutes, and they basically declared him dead.
Yeah.
They say, do you want to spend some time with your child, before we have to go put him in a bag, essentially? And mom goes in there and prays over him for a few minutes, and suddenly there's a pulse, and they come back in there. Now, the truth is, in my opinion, what really happened was this kid fell through the ice. He was under the water for about 15 minutes, and when you freeze the body or have it at very cold temperatures, you are able to resuscitate them after it all thawed, and that's. That's probably what happened. It probably wasn't a miracle, but I'm not going to say it wasn't a miracle. But I'm not a big believer in miracles. But anyway, the movie was all about it being a miracle, and the critics panned that because there was just too much religion in it.
Yeah.
So how do you make a subversive movie? Have you read one of these scripts yet? I'm just kind of curious. You gave The Mule as a good example, but what would be another example of kind of a subversive
and you're going to laugh,
movie?
and I've said this before on another interview, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that's subversive. The reason I say that is you have two male leads. Both of them are flawed, yet they both have their own sense of personal responsibility. There isn't a gay undercurrent. They can have a strong relationship with two straight men, a camaraderie, but yet they are both comfortable in their own skin. And
they weren't in a
hippies. And then the way the hippies were depicted was more not the way hippies are depicted nowadays, which is through rose-colored lenses. The hippies were depicted as they really are, which was not positive. And so for all of those reasons, I think that I think it's a subversive film. Maybe Quentin Tarantino doesn't even know that.
And what is Tarantino? Is he known to be
You know what? I think Tarantino is probably an old school liberal. I don't think he's a leftist. I think he's a classical liberal. And we need more of him. But the problem is that a lot of the former liberals have now been brainwashed into becoming leftists and Marxists and intersectionalists. And collectivists,
globalists, socialists, borderline communists, big.
I mean, it's been, and it's interesting is when you go in and you look at old series, even if it's comedy series or older films, even from maybe 15 years ago, or you start off maybe like in the 40s and 50s, and you kind of move forward and you see how the culture has changed, how it's been a very, very slow move towards socialism, communism, collectivism, globalism. It's been a very slow move.
Progressivism. So
slow, in fact, that a lot of people that are leftists now don't see it. They don't see how they've progressed.
I agree 100%. I think it's one of the things that is most under-discussed subjects out there that has happened very subtly without people realizing it, but it's the slow takeover of the Democrat Party by progressives taking the place of classic liberals, and to the point where most meat and potato Democrats that you ask what's the difference between being liberal and being progressive, they would probably couldn't even tell you the difference between the two.
No.
When
I
in
mean,
fact,
the other thing that I just find so interesting is that when I try and have conversations with progressives, it seems as though their point of view is only this kind of area that is right in front of them. They don't look at the past, other than, things having to do with Hitler, and that's only perfunctory. They are literally only concerned with right now and what's immediately in front of them. And I say, but you need to look at you need to look more laterally and look at the broader picture of what's going on here and what all of this is leading to. And they just, their response is usually, you're crazy, you're insane, you're an effing idiot, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
And they just shut you down and then block you, etc.
Give me those 60s radical liberals that were protesting against the war, protesting against the man, protesting against government and government control and so on. We need that type of liberalism that has distrust for establishment and distrust for the government. Progressivism is all about embracing the government.
Well,
and it getting
funny
bigger
you
and bigger.
should say that, because I actually think that those people in the 60s were the beginning of what we've got today. So I've really, my viewpoints have been changing. First of all, I became a conservative after 9/11. That was my wake-up call. And I've been moving more conservative since then. And as you know, I publicly came out of the closet a few years ago. But I think when you look at the 60s and you look at the 60s revolution, that was a revolution towards progressivism and collectivism. I understand their reason for wanting to question the establishment, but they were already too far in that they wanted to completely throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that was not a good idea. It was a very, very, very bad idea. And that's what we're faced with today. If people want to have more social programs, I understand the reasoning behind that, even though I don't agree with it. But the direction that they've gone in today is such a gravely wrong and scary direction, and they don't see it.
Yeah, I think you're right about the 60s. I guess what I was trying to hearken back to, and what was a good example of it, is Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, who, ultimate whatever he is, but certainly on the left. But I saw him play at Old Shella a couple of years ago when it was the Stones and McCartney and all that, and it was Roger Waters. And he's got this huge screen. He hates Trump, absolutely hates Trump.
I know.
But he's playing The Wall, and it's, Mother, should I trust the government? And then behind him in huge letters, fuck no. I'm like, thank you. We shouldn't trust the government. Where are those liberals that didn't trust the government? Because now they want to hand over everything to the government.
It's true. It's true. Well, they don't realize, actually, that the establishment that they thought that they shouldn't trust is them. They are on the side of the establishment. I think that gets back to what you were saying about the 60s, that, they questioned the establishment, but the establishment are now leftists and globalists.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, really. But there's a whole bunch of things that have changed that have caused our society to change, not only towards collectivism, but also it has to do with our rejection of, getting back to what you were saying about prayer, our rejection of religion and our rejection of God. We've really just wholehearted, and definitely our rejection of Christianity. And the West,
traditional,
not just America, but the West has rejected it so much in favor of, quote, science, as though science is the ultimate truth, which it's not.
I would also add to that traditional values, traditional family, because I'm personally not a huge fan of religion, and I don't think we necessarily need religion to be good people and to have a good society. I do think that religion can add a lot of value. It also has had a lot of negativity in the past, but you're right. We've moved away from religion, and maybe part and parcel of that is moving away from traditional values, traditional family, loving father and a mother in the household, and so on. We just
and
interviewed
the foundations of the Western society.
And why it's so real. We just interviewed a psychologist last week who's an expert in childhood trauma, and basically I just asked him, where would you rank the issue of childhood trauma as far as issues facing the world? He says the world's number one problem, and I happen to agree with that. Childhood, almost every behavior as an adult that is deviant or not positive, addictions and mental illnesses and criminality, et cetera, all go back to childhood trauma. Childhood traumas go way up when you're not raised in a traditional home.
Yeah. I think what has happened is, by us questioning the establishment, we, again, threw the baby out with the bathwater. Christianity, or rather, I guess I should say, the ethics and morals derived from Christianity, okay, I want to make that really clear, derived from Christianity, are the basis for the foundations of Western civilization. If you take all of that away, see, because what's happened is, because we've rejected the idea of Christian religion, this kind of dogma, we've rejected that. We're now rejecting all of it. And what I'm saying is that a civilization without a foundation cannot stand. And the reason why we're moving into collectivism, why we're moving into a more totalitarian society, is because we don't have the internal sense of soul and the sense of what our foundations gave us, that give us this sort of guidance. Because we don't have that, we need to increase the laws that kind of keep people in place. Does that make sense? Because we don't have the way guidance or our own relationship with God. And I say this not as somebody who goes to church every Sunday. I don't. In fact, I don't go to church. I have a strange relationship with that whole thing. That said, I support people going to church. And I support people that, I do absolutely believe in God. And I absolutely believe in the idea of the soul. And this is even more important than the politics, because if we don't get back to that, if we don't get back to our relationship with all of this, to ourselves, our country, our soul, the universe, eternity, if we don't get back to understanding that relationship, we're as humans, we're lost. Because if we think that we can rely on our own mental agility to be able to reason our own morality, well, all you have to do is look at history, and you'll see how that doesn't work.
Agree. Let's talk about Hollywood a bit more and the big story there. And I know you've written on this for Fox, and that is, the Me Too movement, the Harvey Weinstein, et cetera, scandal. What's your current take on it today? Are all the monsters out of the closet, or are there a lot more in there?
Not even close. Not even like tip of the iceberg.
So what's taking so long for them to get outed?
Okay.
We're in the middle of the Me Too movement here. It's supposed to be in vogue for women to come forward.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't before because you were ostracized and you could lose your career, et cetera.
You can still lose your career.
Pardon me?
You can still lose your career.
Okay.
Let me explain how it works. I mean, the thing is, when you have situations where, and it's not just in the Hollywood scene, it's everywhere, where you have situations where someone has access to power and money, and then you have beautiful people that want access to either power, money, or fame, right? And then you've got these people that are powerful and have money that want access to beauty. That exchange happens. And it will continue to happen. It will happen until the end of time. I hate to say this.
Okay, but there's two different types of exchanges.
Okay, with respect to the Me Too movement, it's been heightened. We're at a time where it's been heightened. And I have to say, Rose McGowan, hats off to her, because that took guts for her to do that. There's a lot. I mean, I Me Too'd. You know, I was assaulted years ago by a producer who's dead now. It happens. It's so commonplace. It's common in the acting industry. It's common in the music industry. It's common in the fashion industry. I've seen it all over.
Can we talk? Can we talk about your case when you were assaulted?
Well, I was really young, stupid. This producer said, "Oh, I can help you with your career. Oh, do you want to try a Quaalude?" I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, it's just going to make you relax. So, we can talk easily." He gave me 2. I was so legless, I couldn't move. I mean, I literally was like, like I couldn't move. He just carried me around and did whatever he wanted to me.
So you didn't lose consciousness?
Not quite.
Okay. And
but what I'm saying is that I couldn't move. Like I was like.
Okay. And he sexually assaulted you?
Yeah.
So there was, we don't need to get into details, but I
wasn't raped.
There was non-consensual sexual contact.
Yep.
Second, third base, etc.
Yep.
Okay. So did you report it to anyone?
No, this was a long time ago. I'm older.
Right,
now.
but I'm trying to get into the mentality because it's a really important subject.
I told my agent what happened, and she said, "Wow, I'm really sorry that happened. Just stay home today. You'll be fine tomorrow."
By the way, what are we doing? Why aren't we just saying the name of this asshole?
Well, he's dead now, so what's the point?
So what? He's an asshole.
That's true.
I mean, seriously, why shouldn't we?
I'm sure he's not the only one. The thing is, I don't want to get in a situation where people or his family start getting me for libel, because he has no way of proving it, and I have no way of proving it. It's my word against him or his family. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people. I mean, I could name a lot.
I'm not gonna push you at all.
I could name a lot of names. In the Hollywood scene, in the fashion industry.
Just to be clear, you could name a lot of names that from friends and friends of friends that have a reputation.
I knew about Harvey. I knew Harvey was this predator back in, what was it? Maybe around 2002. I had a friend who had Harvey on speed dial. She lives in New York. And she would say, "Oh yeah, he's a complete predator scumbag, but he's Harvey Weinstein." And so let me explain to you why people haven't come forward. Is that, when you start navigating your career, and you might hear things about how awful some of these people are, you think, well, you know what, I'm fairly smart. I can probably navigate this without having anything happen to me. Right. And, you don't know. I mean, you don't know if you're going to get drugged, if you maybe turned away and they stuck something in your drink. You don't know if you're going to be you think, I mean, for instance, meetings in hotel rooms are not uncommon. I mean, it sounds insane, but they're not. It's just, they're not uncommon. And so if you find yourself in that situation, I mean, I've been in precarious situations where I think, well, thank God I got out of that. You know, how did I get out of that? But I did. That's the thing. You feel like you can kind of navigate around this because there's sort of like this necessary evil to sort of move yourself ahead in your career. I know that sounds terrible, but think about it, especially in the respect of Harvey. Thank God I never met the guy, but with Harvey, he greenlit some great films, right? I mean, he's produced some amazing films. And so people kind of think, well, you know, I know he's a complete scumbag, but wow, he's really powerful and he might be able to help me with my career. So if I can just kind of, you know, am friendly and cordial and work with him enough just to kind of like, you know, it's that push-pull of like, try to get what I want without kind of having to give in to these things, you know? And that's what happens. I mean, if you look at what Ashley Judd said, you know, when she tried to use the whole Me Too Time's Up movement to kind of up her star level again, which I just find really odious. But she said, oh yeah, you know, I had a meeting with Harvey in his hotel room and he propositioned me. And she said, oh, get me an Oscar first and then we'll talk. So does that mean that she would negotiate that sort of thing? Because that's what it sounded like to me.
Well, and let's talk about all the women who were able to climb the ladder by playing that game. How do we feel about women who consensually, quote unquote consensually, you know, they weren't forcibly raped, but they consensually engaged in sex with Harvey or another producer in order to get the part?
You know, it's between them and their conscience. It's between them and God. If they can wake up the next day and be okay with it, well, you know, who am I? Who am I to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem is that that relationship, because that relationship goes on, you're always going to have more Harveys in the world. I mean, if you saw my article for Fox, I said, you know, how to deal with a world full of Harveys. There's always going to be Harveys. You know, are you going to be one of those people that are going to compromise yourself because maybe it doesn't mean that much? You know, you think, yeah, I'll just screw this guy. But you know what? I've got my eye on the ball, so I don't really care. And it doesn't bother you. It doesn't upset you. So you think, well, you just do it.
Yeah.
But then there's plenty of girls that don't want to do that. But the thing is that for those girls that are doing that, or guys, because, you know, it goes the other way. I mean, it goes always. Then the people that are the predators, they're going to think, well, everybody can succumb. Everybody has a price. You know, if I dangle the right carrot, what will they do for that carrot?
Yeah. So by participating in it, they are complicit in it.
Yeah.
And allowing it to continue.
Yeah. And it will continue.
Yeah. So
that's the sad truth. It will continue. Some people will be outed. I think it's great that Harvey got outed. I think it's great that he's in prison now. I honestly do. I think it's fantastic. I would love it if there were more that went to prison, or at least there were more that thought, you know, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I shouldn't try this on, you know, only with those who are maybe only have this kind of relationship or arrangement with people that made it completely and perfectly clear that that's what they're willing to do in order to get where they're willing to go.
But the way I look at it is there's right and wrong in this world. And if a producer makes it very clear to a woman that in order to get this part, here's what you need to do, she shouldn't do it because then she's complicit in it. The women who aren't willing to do it aren't going to get the parts because there's
I've been
women
propositioned like that.
Okay.
I've been propositioned like that. And I've said no. And the reason I've said no is because I can't live with myself the next day. I can't look at myself in the mirror. So
number one,
feel right to me. So that's me.
Okay. So we're in agreement that women should be saying no to that, right? You can say it's their own conscience, but bottom line, if you want to be a good person, if you want to do what's right, you should be saying no to that.
Yeah.
And you should also be reporting it.
Yep.
So why aren't more women reporting it? They're not reporting because they're concerned with their career, right?
Yep.
But
Because they think, well, okay, you know what happens, like in my situation, number one, I was young, I was naive, but you find yourself in that situation, you think, well, you know, I was such an idiot that maybe I walked into it and it was partially my fault because I allowed it to happen. And so that's why a lot of people don't report it, because they kind of blame themselves as well. And look, the people that are predators, they know how to play with people. They know the road that they need to go down in order to get to this place.
But we as society, we really need to talk more openly about this, because you said this is going to go on forever, and I think it doesn't necessarily have to go on forever. Maybe I'm being naive, but in order to at least slow it down, two things need to happen. Men, and let's just speak with men and women now, just to keep it simple. We know it goes beyond that. But men need to understand that you're being a piece of shit, you know what, to do this. Society looks down on you. You're a freaking loser for engaging in this kind of conduct. And when we find out about it, you're going to be ostracized from the Hollywood community.
Maybe the greater society.
Pardon me?
Maybe the greater society, yeah.
Yeah. So men need to understand this. You're going to be ostracized. We're going to find out, and you're a freaking loser. You are a loser. Women need to know that by engaging in it, you're actually no better than him when you engage in it. And
perpetuating it.
You're
I
perpetuating
agree with you on that. However, if you're going to say that, you know, someone like Harvey Weinstein is a 100% loser, here's the gray area. Here's a loser who has made amazing films. And
right.
This is the difference. This is the thing. Imagine being somebody, say you're not just an actor, but, you know, say you're a writer, or say you're a new director or whatever, and you know he's a scumbag. You see him with all these little, you know, wannabe starlets. You know he's a scumbag. However, you think, okay, you know what? I know he's a scumbag, but I'm just going to try and navigate around it and just deal with him only just a little bit so that I can get my project moved forward. You know, that's what happens. And so if we're saying it's not as cut and dry as Harvey Weinstein's a scumbag, the people that have sex with Harvey Weinstein are also scumbags, and that's that. It's not that simple, because you have circles of people around all of this that are willing to just think, oh, okay, I don't really want to know about that because I'm just kind of continuing on my little path here, you know? And
well, I guess the point is,
unfortunately, that's humanity. We're dealing with humanity. We're dealing with people that have power and money on one side, and we're dealing with people that want fame and recognition on the other. And when you have those two things, and you have people that don't have a strong sense of morality, and what happened with that in our society, right? When you have people that don't have a strong sense of morality, you think, you know.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like what you're saying is there's more people complicit in it than just the man and the woman, which is certainly true. There's certainly people working around the person, protecting the person.
You know, I'm going to, you know, as I say, I knew about Harvey Weinstein back in around 2002. Everybody knew.
Yeah. But I still don't feel like
Harvey God. She knew. I'm sure she saw him with various little wannabe starlets and just thought, oh God, that's Harvey. Oh well, you know.
But I don't know. You're kind of tossing your hands up at the situation a little bit more than I am. I'm concerned that this is going to be a blip. It was in the news for a while, and then it's going to kind of peter down, and Hollywood's going to go back to the way it was. And I'm saying that I think that it needs to be talked about more, and I don't think it's as complicated as you do. I think it's very clear that the guy shouldn't do it, and the woman shouldn't do it. I hear a lot about people saying the guy shouldn't do it, and I think we need to shame them even more as part of my point of calling him a loser. I don't care how many great films you made, you're a frickin' loser because you did this.
I'm being the devil's advocate to just paint the picture for you as to why you have not just the wannabe starlet that, or the writer or the director or whatever that wants to move their career ahead. I'm also saying that there's a lot of people that are employed by these people. It's their paycheck and things like that. So where do you, and I mean, believe me, I agree with you. I would love for this not to happen. I would love for this not to happen. And I'm going to go back by saying the reason it is happening is that we have lost our morality and we've lost our sense of ethics. Until we go back to that, until we understand that we need to embrace those things again, and we need to actually care for our soul, our eternal soul, it's going to continue. And I think that's the big reason why, not just in America, not just Hollywood, not just in America, but the whole of Western civilization, the reason why Western civilization is crumbling, and it is because we have lost our sense of morality and ethics.
Well, the last thing I'd say specifically on that issue is now going to the women who are actually abused. So it's not them agreeing to engage in sex, that they're actually sexually abused, sexually assaulted, and so on. The movie Bombshell, did you see Bombshell?
Yeah.
So, which is exactly what we're talking about. Roger Ayers at Fox and doing this with women at Fox, and Megyn Kelly at one point in the movie, acknowledges that, it happened to me. So here's the most successful woman on Fox coming forward and saying that, early in my career, same thing happened to me. And the Margot Robbie character basically looks at her and she's like, thanks a lot. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell others? You knew this? And I'm like, thank you. Great moment in the film where woman B gets mad at woman A for not saying anything about it because it allowed it to happen to me. So what do we have to say about women who are assaulted and don't come forward and do the right thing? I know there's lots of excuses, and I'll never blame the victim, and there's lots of excuses for not coming forward, but shouldn't we be encouraging women come forward?
Yes, we should. Yes, we should. Especially now, because during this lockdown, our economy is going to do, well, God knows what it's going to do. I mean, it's going to be a massive reset. And there's a lot of changes going on in Hollywood, in the industry in general, with regard to our technology and ways for people to view film and things like that, that I think the traditional Hollywood model, as much as all the people at the top want to hang on to it, I think it's going to start to crumble, actually. And so right now is when people should come forward. They should come forward. Yeah. When I came out as a conservative, I knew that I was playing with my career. But the bulk of my career, I'm kind of a strange case because the bulk of my career was in the UK. I had a much better career in the UK. And so when I moved here, I was competing with other actresses that had a long list of American credits, American network credits, and all of my credits were English. I mean, so really, I would have been better off if I had come here, changed my name, and completely decided that I was an English person. And then my entire career probably could have been different.
Hey, you're still young. You're still young.
Here, So anyway, so I was not in as much of a precarious position as some people coming out. But I do have a sense of ethics and morality in the respect that I thought, it's not right what's going on. And so that's why I came out as a conservative, because I saw what was happening in our society. And I wanted to be one of the people to say, wait a minute, look at what's happening to us. We need to put the brakes on this. And that's why I came out. And for the same reason, people in the Me Too industry, now that this is open, and again, hats off to Rose McGowan. We don't agree on a lot of other things, but hats off to her for having the guts to do it, because she did have a lot to lose. She had a ton to lose, and she did it. And I'm I have such respect for her in that respect. So we all need to follow suit. I agree. We all need to follow suit and not put up with it anymore. Yeah.
Is there anyone that you'd like to out on this show that you have firsthand knowledge is an abuser who's in the closet right now?
It's all the people that I'm going to name are people from years and years ago when I was younger.
And this is all firsthand experiences or secondhand, a friend telling you?
Okay. There was a booker in my agency. This is when I was a model because, my young years, I was a model, fashion model. There was a booker with my agency in Milan. His name was Roberto. The name of the agency was Milano Models. Not good. And when I wouldn't put out, he kicked me out of the agency.
Is he still working today, as far as you know?
I ran into him years later at the Bandouche in Paris, which is a big club. It was during, show week. And I think he told me that he was working in Miami for some big Miami agent. And I just remember being at the Bandouche and, all the big top models were there. And he was like, "Oh, darling, mwah, mwah," with, Naomi Campbell and various other people, known big models.
What's his last name?
I can't remember his last name. That's what's so disgusting. I mean, here's the other thing. I met Jeffrey Epstein. in the 90s. I was in Paris. It was either 92, 93, or 94. My booker picked me up at the hotel where I was living because, a lot of models live in these kind of like week-to-week hotels while they're there. And he said, I just want to go over to my friend's house because he's got a couple of our models staying with him to see if they want to come out with us. So we drive over there. And I remember meeting, it's very interesting because when I found out that Epstein had an apartment in Paris, I thought, So I looked up his apartment. And I remember there were certain things I remembered about this apartment. There were, where it was in Paris. I knew where it was in relation to the Arc de Triomphe. It was kind of near there. I remembered parking on the street. There was a hedge, and then there was a kind of grassy bit before it was the actual building was set back. And I remember meeting a guy who was from New York. He was a businessman. He was kind of attractive, but I remembered he had this kind of oversized jaw, right? And, he had the model staying in one of his rooms. They were just sleeping in mattresses on the floor, typical kind of model situation for models that travel all the time. And, we just sat there for about a half an hour while the girls decided whether they were going to come or not, had an inane conversation. I remember shaking his hand. He had this really soft handshake, which was a bit and I remember seeing the apartment was not fully kitted out as if somebody lived there all the time. It looked like a part-time situation. And I guarantee you the times that he was there was in the summertime. Now, if you were to ask me, why was he there in the summertime? Because the summertime is when all the youngest girls are off school and they come to Paris and they come to Milan to try and get more tear sheets for their book, right? So those are the ones that he's targeting.
And you set it up like a model's apartment, it sounds like. Like he was allowing models to live in his apartment.
Right. So he surrounded himself in the fashion industry for that reason. And I'm sure he was most active in the summertime.
So he struck you as extremely creepy or only kind of creepy?
No, just I wasn't really sure what to make of him. He was so casual. Like he was very kind of, how can I describe his, you see what I'm like. I'm quite animated and, I have a lot of energy. He was very, very low key, very, very casual. Just really, really low key calm. And when you see, you know, some of the interviews with him, he seemed that way too. You know, just very kind of.
Did you have any other stories that you heard about him from model friends?
No, because I mean, this only dawned on me recently, and I kind of put all my memories together, and I thought, oh my God, I met the guy. I shook his hand. Yeah. I have other stories of, you know, the fashion industry and what goes on in the fashion industry. And in fact, in the mid 90s, a writer came to me. This is when I was living in London, because I spent most of my career in London. A writer came to me and she said she wanted to do an expose on the model industry, more specifically on the whole heroin chic thing in London. And I said to her, and this is after I had spent time, a few different sessions in Milan and also in Paris. And I said, hey, I said, you want the dirt on the model industry? I said, you need to go to Milan and Paris. And I proceeded to tell her how all of this works. You know, the clubs hire these PRs that basically, now I've heard from models recently that I met, that these PRs actually hang out outside of castings. So they're actually connected with the bookers, with clients, with the other thing in the fashion industry in Milan, the agency owners are usually mafia and their mafia buddies or friends of mafia. Okay, those are the people with a lot of money that, yeah, they're the ones that run all the model agencies. Okay,
a fun little side
dark
business.
World. People don't realize it's a really dark world. I mean, you know, I could give you more details about what happened in Paris, and obviously still goes on. But you know, I mean, I was one of the lucky ones. I didn't get my I didn't get my drink drugged. I didn't get roofied. But I've known people that have. I've known people where that's happened to them.
Yeah, the modeling industry is something that really has kind of escaped a lot of attention thus far. It's been mostly about acting. I want to ask you one more and then get into Eyes Wide Shut, if you don't mind. I am a big fan of the movie, and I hope it doesn't make you uncomfortable that I've seen you naked. But so
the world has seen me naked, baby.
But speaking of the closet, Hollywood being in the closet as far as gays, and what I complain about is Hollywood likes to portray itself as being so forward-thinking and advanced and liberal and open-minded and so on, yet you have all these gays in the closet. I'm like, you know, if one of these high-profile people would come out, I mean, the amount that would, and there's been a small handful of them, but what would advance the interests of open-mindedness and love and respect for gays?
I don't really understand why anybody who's gay in Hollywood has any issue whatsoever with coming out. In fact, the opposite would, if they came out being gay, they would be so celebrated. I mean, it would be completely the opposite. It's like if you're gay or you're trans or there's something else that's kind of different about you, you're celebrated. It's people like me that are really not celebrated. I mean, I'm straight, I'm married, I'm conservative, I'm white, I'm over 40. I mean, I'm
you're
not
checking
heavy.
You're checking the boxes.
I don't have anorexia. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like I'm just this boring person that I am like the last choice on the list now. And I'm not saying that from a position of, oh, I'm a victim, look at me. You know, the way I look at it, the way I look at life is I'm going to make my own way regardless.
Yeah, I took off a lot of the same boxes except I'm half Italian, so I have that going for me.
Well done. Oh, that's the only little teeny thing I have going for me is I'm part Native American. My mother belonged to the Yankton Sioux tribe.
Oh, we all have like 0.1% of us Native American.
Oh, no. My mother was a legal member.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and my grandmother was born on the reservation.
Well, the theory is that internationally, these stars feel like they would not do well. America has become pretty open-minded toward gay, obviously, and so is Europe. But Middle East, Asia, Even Eastern Europe, Russia, as an example, Ukraine, etc., are not near as open-minded about gay as we are. So their international box office would be affected.
Yeah, that's a point. That's a point.
But,
interesting, though, isn't it, how they are so supportive of those things?
Right. Well, and interesting how it comes.
Don't you find it interesting that they don't really like the idea of conservatives, yet you've got incredibly oppressive regimes in Islamic regimes and also in the communist regime of China, and yet you can't say anything against China because China, again, goes right back to it, brings them big money. And because they bring them big money, they shut their mouth and they toe the line. And I think that's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, that's the Hollywood hypocrisy that we're talking about. And at the end of the day, it's about money. And I think the same thing relates to the gay issue. I think the right thing to do, without question, is for these actors, especially the high-profile ones, to come out of the closet because A, it's just being honest. B, it's demonstrating that there's no shame in this. There's nothing wrong with it. And as far as you shouldn't be discriminated against based upon it. And they would be very helpful to people out there that
in the West. I'm just going to say, in the West, this is the thing that bothers me about the left, is that they think that they're being discriminated for being gay, and they aren't. I mean, people are not discriminated for being gay in the West anymore. But I think that people on the left, they love being a victim. They just love embracing it. It's like, oh, I'm a victim.
Well, they love the narrative that, well, and this is what I heard about one gay celebrity, that, but in the middle of the country, they're not accepting. So, on the coasts, we're okay, but I can't come out of the closet because of the middle of the country, which I think is absolutely not true.
Most of the people in Hollywood don't give one toss about the middle of the country.
And the middle of the country is more forward-thinking than they realize. The only problem is they do have perhaps more traditional values, but they're very. Let's put it this way.
I'm glad that they do, actually, because it's the middle of the country. When my husband and I moved here from the UK, we saw America as the last hope for humanity, for Western civilization, for freedom. And I look at the people in the middle of the country, and I look at the people in the South, the ones that all the arrogant people on the coast say, oh, they're just a bunch of bigoted, racist, Christians, they say, seething as they say the word. And the thing I would like to say back to those people, I said, yeah, well, it's those people that will save this country. It's those people that will save Western civilization. So even though I am firmly a coastal person, obviously, I mean, I've never lived in the middle of the country, but I am in full support of those people because those people are true patriots.
Yeah, and I think they're far more accepting than they get credit for. Elton John packs arenas all over there. He does just fine. So I think so speaking of actors in the closet, let's move to Eyes Wide Shut and Tom Cruise.
Okay. You
got to work directly with Tom, which is amazing. My theory is that he's in the closet. If you want to share your theory about that, you're welcome to do that.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, at one point, I'll just share a little kind of anecdote. The first day that we were filming, we were doing the bathroom scene, and I'm kind of, we had just cut, or we were in between shots or whatever, and it's before they brought a towel over, because I would get, and Tom was very respectful about that. If they didn't bring the towel over to cover me up, Tom would say, hey, can you bring your towel over? Because he sensed that I'm like, look, we're not filming. Do I need to really be,
You see, right? I told you he's gay. No straight man would say, get a towel on this woman.
Okay, but hang on. No, I think he was being respectful. But
okay.
So at one point, Sydney and Tom, I can't remember who was on which side, were standing there, and I'm, as I am, in all my glory. And they're standing over me, and Tom looks down, and then he looks at Sydney, and he goes, I love my job.
Yeah, he was
funny. And I'm sure we've all heard the stories about, oh, a friend of mine said that he's a rent boy and he went off with Tom. And, there's all kinds of crazy stories that you hear supposedly about Tom. But you're going to hear that you hear stories about every celebrity. There's always different ideas. And the bigger celebrity you are, the more stories there are floating around. Just to give an example, the gay thing aside, we were filming, we had broke, and my father said, we heard that Tom was buying property over somewhere in the kind of Palo Alto area, because my father lived in that area. And so when we came back to set, I said, hey, Tom, are you guys buying property out in over kind of, just south of San Francisco, Palo Alto, Hillsborough area? And he looked at me and he said, no. And he said, if I had a penny for every false thing that has been said about me, he goes, I would be so much richer than I already am.
Yeah. Well, what I've always found odd, though, is how he would file these lawsuits against people who would accuse him of being gay. And I'm kind of like, if I'm a straight guy killing it with the ladies because I'm Tom Cruise, and somebody writes a story that I'm gay, I think I would just laugh about it, So I always find that a little odd that it comes across he does protest too much.
I think that in those respects, I'm just guessing here. I reckon he just takes himself seriously, and he wants the press to take him seriously.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to be frank. Until I see him in flagrante with some other dude, I'm not going to say yay or nay because I don't know. Yeah. And there's some people that you think, oh, he's definitely gay, and then you see him with a girlfriend, you're thinking, what the hell, and vice versa. So I guess I just don't assume. I didn't have any indication when we were working together. There was no kind of frisson between us, really. I didn't really. He's a bit kind of too sort of, how can I explain? Kind of too sort of goody two-shoes, kind of all-American, doesn't really have an edge about him. So he's not really somebody that I would fancy, Right. So there wasn't really that sort of frisson between us, but we got along great. And I will say, I think he's great. He's so professional. He's a great actor. I'd work with him again in a millisecond.
So it was
the good things to say about him on set.
So you had a once in a lifetime experience for any actress to be able to work with Tom Cruise, who's going to go down as one of the greatest and most successful actors of all time, and then also to have worked with Stanley Kubrick, and which the same thing can be said about him as a director. So I just love to get your take on both of them. So before we move to Stanley, to finish with Tom, what can you tell everyone, for all the people who haven't worked with Tom Cruise on a movie and shot a couple very significant scenes in a very important, impressive movie, the last one of Stanley Kubrick's career. Yeah, what can you tell us about what it was like working with Tom Cruise as an actor, or any other anecdotes?
I didn't find him to be a prima donna. I found him to still give 100%, even if the camera was not on him, so that my performance was good. He was just 100% professional. He was absolutely committed and earnest, and he was friendly. He was friendly to everybody. He was friendly to the crew. I hate to say it. I know that sounds boring, but I don't have anything bad to say about the guy. I think he's just stellar. That's why I would work with him again in a second. I didn't get any trace of ego from that guy. And I know we've heard stuff like, had to have some special tunnel made from his dressing room to set when he was doing Mission Impossible. I didn't see it. That sounded like BS to me. He really did.
And during these couple very big scenes, which were shot over, how many total days did you shoot?
Oh, I don't know. Between rehearsal and shooting, it was easily 2-3 months, but I was paid for 8.
Paid for 8 months. Wow. But really, when you watch the film, there's really just two major scenes that you're in.
We did a lot. Well, no, and I was but I was also in the orgy scenes. Not the orgy scenes. I was in the ritual scenes of the 12 girls in the circle and all of that. Okay. The only ones that I wasn't in were the actual orgy scenes.
What did you observe as far as communication between Cruise and Kubrick?
So that was very interesting. Tom was extremely respectful to Stanley. And so there would be moments where, maybe we were shooting or we cut and we were about to shoot again, do another take. And Tom would sort of pause and look at Stanley and just say, "Hey, Stanley, can I talk to you for a second?" And so everything would stop. They would leave set and go somewhere for, a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, not really longer than that, have whatever conversation they were going to have. And then they would come back, nothing was said, and then they would begin again. And that did happen a number of times, but at no point did Tom question anything or say, well, except for the fact the bathroom scene that we shot, the three of us, Tom and Sydney and I, kind of rewrote that scene together. It kind of all started with, I think I said one word, I said better, "Oh, Mandy, how are you feeling? Better."
Well, let me set the scene. I think most people listening or watching have seen the movie, but just to set the scene, he's at a big party toward the beginning of the movie, and Sidney Pollack is the one who invited him, and then Tom gets called up because Sidney Pollack character wants to talk to him about something. He comes in, and he was having sex with a prostitute up there, despite the fact that his wife is down at the party. He had snuck up. He's having sex with a prostitute, but she has overdosed on a speedball, a mix of heroin and cocaine, and Tom is being brought in as a doctor to try to resuscitate you or find out what the issue is. Now, but that was actually in a room. That wasn't the bathroom, right?
No, that was in the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
Bathroom, yeah.
Okay, for some reason I thought it was a regular room, but maybe it was just a super nice bathroom.
It is in that same bathroom, and then when I come to where I've got the towel on me is, when I've supposedly been resuscitated. I lost my train of thought.
Well, you're talking about how you get.
So anyway, so in that scene where I'm kind of a bit more awake, and he says, "How are you? How are you feeling now, Mandy?" I remember the script said something like "better," and I said to Stanley, I said, I feel like I'd want to do this, and I can't remember the details of who said what or how we did things, but I remember saying, I'm feeling like I want to do this or say this, and Stanley goes, "Okay, say that," and then Tom would say, "Well, if she's going to do that, maybe I should do this." And then Sydney would say, "Well, if you guys are going to do that, well, what if I did this?" And we pretty much kind of rewrote that whole scene together. And, they had the script girl, just kind of writing everything in as we were doing it. And Stanley was pretty open. It's like, "Yeah, okay, let's try that. Let's do that," And we just, we kind of rewrote that scene and shot it, and it was all good. And that was it. And I mean, I guess for me, the fact that I even said anything, maybe other girls in this situation, maybe if I had been in LA, maybe I would have been more fearful. I don't know. But the attitude in England is really more like, or at least how I felt, is that I just thought, you know what? I don't care that I'm a nobody and I've been plucked from obscurity or whatever. I thought, I'm here. I've been hired to do a job. I'm going to do the job to the best of my ability. And so as far as I was concerned, we were all equals. We were all equals working together. And I just wanted to help make it the best thing it could be. And that was that, and I had that attitude. So that's why I spoke up. That's why I said, I feel like I want to say this. Right. And then that started that whole thing.
As opposed to Tom Cruise, who was more respectful of Stanley than you were. And he would make sure that if he had any commentary about how things were going, he would take him into a separate room, which kind of makes it. I don't know what was said. I don't know what he was discussing.
But
that does sound like what he was doing, right?
He sound from everyone else there. So I have no idea what they would say, but I know that it happened a number of times.
But it sounds like it really was a collaboration, the entire film between Cruise and Stanley, and to the point where I think I've heard you say in a prior interview that you didn't even have the full script.
No, I didn't. Mm-mm. No, they really, really, really kept that under wraps. Yeah. So everybody's running around going, "Oh, I've read the script." I'm like, "No, you."
How many people do you think had read the script?
Obviously, the camera, the DPs, the immediate crew. Obviously, Tom and Nichole, but I think the rest of them probably not. They probably just had their scenes.
So you were there for many months in trying to piece together what the heck this movie was all about?
At one point, I asked Tom, I said, "Hey, what kind of doctor are you?" And he's like, "Oh, you'll have to see the film." I'm like, "Really? Really? You're not even going to tell me what flipping kind of doctor you are? Okay, whatever, But, I mean, he didn't know me from Adam. Who knows what kind of person I was,
Let me ask you something. So. Do you think this was unique to Kubrick not wanting people to know, or do you think that it was just more a matter of, hey, we don't want the script to leak out, so the fewer people we give the script to, the better?
I don't know the answer to that. I think Kubrick probably was very secretive about his scripts because there's always, whenever Stanley would do a new film, it was always a very big deal, wasn't it? So,
yeah, I mean, typically in a film like that, you would be given the full script, though, right?
Yeah. Well, sure. I mean, I've never had that situation before or since. I've always had the full script. Always.
Okay, and now you're shooting the orgy scenes or whatever we call this place where the party was.
I separate the two. You've got the ritual scenes where all the girls are in the circle, and then we start peeling off. So I shot those scenes. But the scenes where you see the girls in various positions of an orgy, that I was not involved with.
So the ritual scenes, though, are still pretty weird. As you were shooting those, what was your thought as to what you thought he was trying to depict?
Well, I thought it was some sort of a ritual of some sort. I thought the music he used, it sounded somewhat satanic, and I knew that it had a creepy element, but that's about as far as it went because I didn't know what the rest of the script was. So I had no way of knowing. I had no way of knowing at that time what the intention was.
And they never flat out say that it was satanic ritual in the movie, but is that
No, I mean, when you listen to that music, it sounds pretty dark, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the guy's wearing red.
Yeah, sounds pretty dark.
Okay, and
here's the thing about Stanley, though. One of the things that I love about his filmmaking, and in fact, the reason I even put myself forward for the film was because of Stanley. I mean, at the time, I was like, Tom Cruise, so what? I wasn't really like, that one way or another about Tom. And since then, I like him a lot more after working with him. But Stanley, I've always loved his work. And what I love about Stanley is that he doesn't spell it out. He doesn't spell out the meaning of everything. Whereas you look at someone like Spielberg and the way he makes films, he likes to spell things out. He likes to kind of spoon feed his audience. And Stanley doesn't underestimate the intelligence of his audience, and he allows people to theorize actually endlessly over what the meanings are. And probably the reason, people go on and on about Eyes Wide Shut having to do with the Illuminati and Satanism and, the elites of this world, which I think it probably does go on. But it's a way that Stanley could sort of make that statement without making that statement in a way, because it's a story.
He's notorious for shooting scenes again and again and again. So is that what happened in the ritual scenes?
Yep.
And could you at least kind of know
we were rehearsing those ritual scenes, the The girls in the circle, that initial scene before they started peeling off, all of that scene, well, and the peeling off. And then as, my character, Mandy, started walking up the stairs. That scene we rehearsed from the beginning to walking up the stairs. We did that again and again and again. And we rehearsed for probably a month before we started filming.
To the point where you thought this is kind of absurd?
It was frustrating. I actually got injured, which is why you see a credit of Abigail Good being Mysterious Woman, because I was injured. We were having to, kneel down and then get back up in, 4.5-inch heels. And I actually pulled my fascia. And so I was having trouble kneeling down and getting back up because it was hurting. I ended up getting coproximal. So I was just kind of tingling when we finally were shooting it, but the damage had already been done. And my own private doctor gave me that. And I'm not somebody that likes to take drugs or painkillers, but I said to my doctor at the time, I said, look, I've done this. I've done damage to this, and but I can't afford to have this happen. So please, can you give me something? And she knew me, and she knew that I wasn't the type to abuse any kind of drugs. So she gave that to me so that I would be okay for the scenes. But the thing is that at that point, it was already too late. And he said, I can't take a chance because you're injured. So I'm going to have to, give you a body double, which in essence is what Abby is.
So do you think there was a method to his madness, or the guy was just kind of a bit nuts to be doing all this rehearsing and all these takes?
Okay. You know how sometimes you see someone who maybe you might consider them a genius and they have this preconceived vision and idea, and whatever they do leading on from that point is to realize that preconceived vision. That's not Stanley. So what Stanley is someone who is a genius in the way that of how he does a tremendous amount of research and pulls in different elements in order to make things happen in the way that he in the way that it evolves for it to be what works for him. Sorry, I don't know if that makes sense. He doesn't have as much of a preconceived idea. It's more, he'll get in the position, he'll have an idea of how he wants to shoot something, and then at that point, he'll explore various ideas. So the reason for his tons and tons of rehearsals, it kind of gives him a way of exploring more comprehensively. Mm-hmm. So he will, explore with different lighting, different light strengths or sets, different camera movements. I mean, he was very, very, very specific on camera movements and camera timing. For instance, in the bathroom scenes, I remember for the initial shot, I remember, you had the camera, it was on a dolly, and it would move forward, and then the camera would kind of dip down like this, and then it would kind of move up and then stop at a certain point on me. And in the scene, as we were doing the scene, it had to reach this point, and then this point, and then this point, and then this point at the exact right moment that he wanted it to be reached. And that evolved as he went on. And so what I'm saying is that's why the rehearsals were so involved and why they took so long, because one, he could, and two, he wanted to find the best way. So it wasn't like he would go into a room going, with his little eye thing going, yep, this is the shot. He would walk into a room with his little, lens and say, yeah, let's try it from this angle. Let's try this. Right. And it was a matter of trial and error. His genius came from doing the research and surrounding himself with excellent people in all areas.
So if you're a Kubrick fan, you should really appreciate every second of the film, because you're saying that basically every second was thought through to the nth detail for him.
It was. And even, some people go crazy with some of the continuity, right? They're going, but there was a vase in that other shot and now the vase is gone. There was something, I can't remember if it was a vase or some other sort of trinket that was in the bathroom scenes. And for the first scene or the second scene, it was in one place. And then for the other scene, it was either gone or in another part of the room. And I remember the continuity girl would say, but Stanley, that was in there for the first, like, I don't care, it's like, it doesn't look good in the frame right now in this particular, So that was the thing, is that he was a real stickler for every frame and the timing and the lighting and in fact, even down to my lip color. I remember the first scenes, we changed my lip color 3 or 4 times until it was the exact shade that he wanted.
Oh, I have to ask you this question because I rewatched it last night in preparation for our discussion, and there's a little part that doesn't make sense. At least maybe I missed it. How did you know, for the film's sake, that Tom Cruise was Tom Cruise? Because after the ritual, you go up to him and you say, hey, you need to get out of here. It's not safe here.
Yeah.
According to the story, you're going to him because you remember him as being the doctor who had helped you, yet he's behind a mask. So how did you know that was him?
Well, that's something that Stanley does not spell out for people. And we can forever theorize why Mandy knew this. Either Mandy was told, people knew who he was when he came in. I don't know. We can never theorize.
Okay. So it wasn't an error by Stanley that I caught, though.
No, he wouldn't.
She clearly was tipped. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe she was pointed out to that, hey, get rid of this guy.
Yeah, but it's a theory. Just like, I mean, his films are like what's the thing where you it's like a flower. You can keep peeling the petals and finding more and more and more. It's like a Mandelbrot set, you can keep peeling it and finding more detail. He just didn't spell things out because he allowed the audience to decide what that story was. And it's just very interesting that through the years, you can watch the story, watch the film the first time and have one idea, and then maybe watch it again and have another idea, and subsequently continually have different ideas and different theories about what the meaning was, what the point was, what really happened. And that's kind of the beauty of it, really.
Yeah. But during all your time with him, did he ever espouse in front of you what the movie was about or what he was trying to get to, or give you any clues as to what the point of the movie was?
Nope. And in fact, what was so interesting is that he didn't like to talk about him, and he didn't like to talk about he didn't really like to talk about much about his past. I mean, there was a few little things that he said, like he was telling me about a scene in Dr. Strangelove that he still chuckled about, he told me about. But for the most part, he spent a lot of his time finding out about other people. He was like a sponge. He didn't want to talk about himself. He wanted to find out everything about other people. So he was constantly asking me questions about me, my life, why do I live in London? What else do you do? I mean, at one point, this is early on, I said, oh, well, I'm a model. And then also I make music, I sing and I write and produce and everything. And he said, oh, I'd love to hear some of your music. And I said, really? I mean, you're in the middle of shooting this film. He goes, no, please, So I made up a tape for him, and it was like a half hour's worth of music. He came back the next day, I kid you not, the next day, and he said, well, I listened to all of your songs. He goes, and your voice is excellent. And he said, now this song, what did you mean with blah, blah, blah? And he was asking me questions about each song. And I was just gobsmacked because I thought, here you are, you're filming this thing. You're probably going home to look at the rushes of what you're the rehearsal rushes and whatever, and the footage that you did shoot. And yet you still took a half an hour to listen to, me, little old me, pee on unknown me, to listen to all of my songs. I mean, that's just incredible to me.
That's
but
cool.
That's what he was like. He liked to find out about everything about other people, because I think that he was like this sponge, and it helped him to kind of gain more knowledge about the world, really.
Well, it's pretty amazing that two actors at the height of their careers, Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise, were willing to subject themselves to being in a film with him, because, I mean, the number of months they had to spend with him doing his endless number of takes, it's amazing they had the patience.
Kubrick. I mean, do you think that it would have been my first choice for me to do frontal and rear full nudity? I mean, but it's just like when the opportunity arises, you think it's Stanley Kubrick, so okay, Yeah. And but I did turn him down. I mean, he wanted me to be involved in the quote action of the orgy scenes, and I really was not comfortable. I was so uncomfortable. In fact, I said, Stanley, I just can't do it. It just doesn't. I just
and
can't.
You probably regret that to this day, because you could have had more scenes in a Stanley Kubrick movie.
Nope, don't regret it. Not 1 second. Not 1 second.
My favorite part of the movie, and you weren't in it.
Because I know who I am, and I know what I can live with and what I can't live with. And just as a little side note, it was only about a year and a half or 2 years previous to that, I was actually sexually assaulted on the street by a stranger, and I was injured, and I hadn't really recovered from that. I was just having kind of like this waking nightmare of the thing happening over and over again, and I actually felt really vulnerable. I used to do, as a fashion model, you kind of don't care about nudity because you're changing all the time, and it's just like you think of your body as just another outfit pretty much. But after that incident of being assaulted on the street, I felt very vulnerable, and I felt vulnerable for quite a long time. And so when we were shooting, I did feel vulnerable, which is why I wanted the towel, which is why I wanted my robe. It was just, it was that aspect of it wasn't easy, but I really wanted to work with Stanley Kubrick because I was a huge fan, like so many people. And so you do what you do. But
I think it was a good decision.
I had to draw the line. I did not want to participate in the action of the orgy scenes. I didn't see the point. Somebody else could do it with my hair, which is exactly what happened. Right.
Well, we've been talking so much. We're running low on battery, but I do want to allow you the opportunity to provide your 2 cents before the battery runs out on COVID and how you feel about state of California's response to it as we sit here locked down in Los Angeles, or whatever commentary you want to provide.
We need to open up, and we need to open up immediately. Those people that are at risk, that are higher risk, need to do whatever they need to do in order to feel safe. If they want to continue to quarantine themselves in order to feel safe, fine. However, they are saying that in regards to immunity, we lessen our immunity by quarantining ourselves, the healthy. We need to be out there exposing ourselves to other bacterias and viruses. That's how we keep our immune system up. But for those people that are high risk, I say, sure, take whatever necessary precautions you need to take in order to keep yourself safe. But for the rest of us, this is what's happening now, specifically more so in the blue states. I think this is a test run. It's a test run for totalitarianism, and they're loving it. They are loving it. And the people that, the leftists that are following, their mayors and governors that are Democrat, they're in full trust and faith that they're doing it for their safety and security. But for me, you have a choice in this world. Do you want freedom, or do you want the the idea of safety and security. If you have freedom, you can provide your own safety and security, and you don't need to rely on government to tell you that they're making you safe and secure, because honestly, they can't. You can. You have the power to make yourself safe and secure. We need to open up immediately.
Yeah, I think this is it's a true test of who the true individual freedom lovers are. This is kind of the litmus test.
Yeah. Yeah.
Julienne.
So I'm hoping that we do open up, and if we don't, and this is the beginning of something terrible, well, there's always war. And I'm not kidding.